Welcome everyone. So this week our Torah portion is Beshalach, when he sent. Now, as Pharaoh finally let Yahweh's people go, well, Yahweh knew the heart and mind of his people, and thus he knew that if they had took the easy route out of Egypt that was even closer, that upon seeing war, that they would fare and run back to Egypt to seek refuge. Thus Yahweh instead had them to be led out by a roundabout route through the desert by the sea of Soph. Now, they did not leave empty-handed, you see. They also left the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, fully armed. And what did they leave with? Well, understand this, that the Israelites chose to leave with all the riches and the things that they borrowed also from the Egyptians. But what was it that Moshe took? Yes, the bones of Yosef. You see, it said that with the bones of Yosef because they carried such a righteous person with them, and that he did a righteous deed instead of taking the riches of the land. He fulfilled the promise that was done with Yosef through his people to take his bones with them to their land, that the righteous act was the thing that also kept them surviving and alive. Other than the deeds, because with the treasures of the land, that could also be seen as idols as well, and idols aren't going to get you anything. But when you keep the righteousness in Yahweh, that's what's going to lead you to safety, to salvation, to Yeshua. But most importantly, Moshe to say, took the bones of Yosef with him, which was the number one thing at that point, thus fulfilling the oath made with Yosef that Yahweh willingly had the people make with him. Now, certainly, we understand this to be a thing of beauty, because not only did Yosef do so much for them, and he kept them out of slavery, he protected them in Egypt, but now he's coming with them to carry on with the protection given by Yahweh through his people that he helped restore. But they had two leaders, you understand, that were with them at this point. The greater Adonai went ahead of them first as a father building his children and guiding them, but he went ahead of them in a column of cloud during the daytime to lead them, and as a column of fire to give them light during the night. And now, what did Yeshua leave on, I ask you? Yes, a cloud. And I ask you this now. What is it that he, our Messiah, would return on to lead his people? Yes, a cloud as well. So you can clearly equate that this was Yeshua, or Adonai, who led them in the wilderness. He was there in the beginning, and he will be there everlasting at the end. Aleph Tav. Great I am that he is. Now, Yahweh told his children next to turn around and set up camp in front of Pi Hasherat, or the place where the reeds grow. Now Yahweh told them through Nebuah, or prophecy, that as hard-hearted as Pharaoh was, that he would think that Yahweh's people were cornered and had no other path to exit, as they were closed in by the sea, and also by the animals and the beasts of the wilderness. So, Yahweh took this opportunity to show the people of his and Pharaoh that as Pharaoh once again pursued them, that Yahweh would win glory, kavod, honor for himself at Pharaoh's expense, that all would truly realize that he truly is Adonai, the Echad, one and only. Thus what followed was Pharaoh and the Egyptians pursuing the children of Israel. But when the children of Yahweh saw that they were being pursued by Pharaoh, they became very fearful, and thus lost faith in Yahweh, and cried out to Adonai, and said to Moshe, Was it because there were not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us out to die in the desert? Which actually made no sense, because wasn't Egypt but a big desert in itself? Now, but as a true loyal servant to Yahweh, Moshe told them to stop being so fearful and to remain steady or strong in Yahweh, because he is going to save you. He assured them that this would be the last of Egypt that they would see, and that Adonai would do battle for them. So next, Yahweh told the children of Israel to go forward. He told Moshe to raise his staff over the sea and to divide it into two. Now, this is big, because it was as if to say that he divided the one into two, as Yeshua and Abba made a straight, safe way for his people. But Yahweh also had the cloud move from in front of the children of Israel to go behind them, dividing and protecting them from the Egyptians. But the light was with the children of Israel at night, while the Egyptians had darkness and cloud. So next, as Moshe used his staff as Yahweh commanded, you see Yahweh made the sea become dry land as the children of Israel crossed over, which was like an early baptism, as they were cleansed and now followed Yahweh and worshipped him, as like when you become a follower of Messiah Yeshua, you cross over into a new life. Now, afterwards, the Egyptians next tried to pursue the Israelites through the open and parted sea. But you see, they failed, as Adonai told Moshe to raise his hand out over the sea to cover the Egyptians, as Adonai swept the Egyptians into the sea because they were not protected under the covering God of Yahweh. Now, at this point, it was when the Israelites saw all the bodies of the dead Egyptians on shore that they feared Adonai, and they believed Adonai in his servant Moshe. And then Moshe and the people of Israel then sang the song of Moshe. Now afterwards, Moshe led them traveling for 3 days in the desert, and they arrived at Marah, which means bitterness, which is what the water they found there was. And what followed was to go and get tough. And the Israelites at this point grumbled against Moshe and asked what they shall drink. So Moshe seeked out, as we should always, Yahweh for guidance. And Yahweh showed him to a certain piece of wood, which he threw into the water, which made it taste oh so good. And it was then that Yahweh made rules of Kai for them, and also there where he tested them and told them that if they listen to his voice and keep his laws and pay attention to his mitzvahs, that he would not afflict them with any of the plagues or diseases that the Egyptians had brought on them. Which is a beautiful point. So when we see out through the ages that all these diseases, famines, killings, wars, everything, battles just happen, it's because all these things in these situations right at the center of it between the people had not been following Yahweh or keeping to his covenant. And thus, it was why these things happened. And thus, it was not the reason of Yahweh presenting these things to the world. It was because man did not present themselves to Yahweh. You see that all these things and such happen, and generational curses and such. So when people try to blame and say, why is Yahweh letting this stuff happen? Why did Yahweh have this person die? Remember, it wasn't always Yahweh. It was because the sins of the land. We did not come to him and worship him. So we did not have his protection or guidance. Thus he told us this would happen. Like he said that if they listen to his voice and keep his laws and pay attention to his mitzvahs, that he would not afflict them with any of these plagues or diseases that the Egyptians had brought on themselves. Now, as they had arrived at the Sin desert. The Israelites grumbled once again against Moshe and Aaron, saying to them, "We wish Adonai had used his own hand to kill us in Egypt. There we used to sit around the pots with the meat boiling, and we had as much food as we ever wanted." But you have to see that they got to the point right now where they said, "But you have taken us out into the desert to let this whole assembly starve to death," forgetting who they were talking to and who they were with, Yahweh. But, we all see and know that they were really beating around the bush complaining to Yahweh. They were saying it was guided towards Moshe, but they knew that Moshe was speaking for Yahweh. So at this point, they were really speaking about Yahweh. It's kind of like talking about somebody behind their back right in front of them, or trying to say, "I had this friend," or, I know somebody who's kind of like that. And you're talking about the person right in front of you. It was just like that. Now, Yahweh next presents to them manna to eat that he would cause to rain down from Shamayim, and that the Israelites were to gather only a day's ration every day, as it would be a test to see if they would truly observe his Torah. Now, as for laboring on the Shabbat, well, Yahweh would on the sixth day give them a double portion of the manna to have for both the sixth and the seventh day of the week. Now get this. Manna actually was like this. They didn't have a name for it, so manna means such as like saying whatchamacallit. That's the way you could say it. It's like saying, I don't know what that stuff is, but whatchamacallit, that stuff. So it's like saying that. So when you're saying manna, they didn't have an exact name for it, because you see, it was a miraculous gift from Yahweh, because first of all, it came down from Shamayim. And then second of all, it was presented from Yahweh from the heavens. And the other thing is this. It tasted as whatever, like if this person would taste it, it'd be something that they loved, something different from what this person was tasting. So you see, it was kind of like, do you remember Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Do you remember they had the, I think it was the Everlasting Gobstopper, or one of those candies that they had in that movie, and they presented it, and they were like, it would taste like whatever you want it to taste like. It had so many different flavors. It was kind of like that, and that's probably where they actually got the concept from. Somebody was reading Torah at that point and say, "Hey, let's put this in the script." But no, that's what it is, though. When you say manna, it's kind of like that, whatchamacallit, because they didn't have a name, because it was likened to each person's individual liking, I guess you could say. Whatever they flavored and loved to eat, that's what it tasted like for each person. It was different for each person, but they all loved it at that point. But get this. Now, as they had earlier complained about food, remember that Yeshua told us that man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes out of Yahweh's mouth. Now, Yahweh also provided them with meat, or we could say quail, at dusk of the days, because they complained for it. Thus, in the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, while in the morning there was a layer of dew all around them in the camp. Now, with the manna, Moshe told them that they were not to keep any manna till morning. But you see, they did not listen at this point. And some kept leftovers until morning, not realizing or having enough faith that Yahweh would provide for them for the next day. Now this, I guess we could say leftover manna, or leftover whatchamacallit, it had bred worms and rotted, which made Moshe angered at them for not having faith. Now Adonai ordered that with the manna, that they let 2 quarts of manna be kept through all their generations, so that they will be able to see the bread which Adonai had fed them in the desert when he brought them out of Mitzrayim, Egypt. Now the children of Israel continued eating manna for 40 years. So what followed again was the complaining of the children of Israel. But Yahweh helped Moshe with their complaining and told him to use his staff as Yahweh would stand in front of him there on the rock in Horeb, and to strike the rock, and then water would come out, if for the children to drink. And Moshe did as Yahweh commanded in front of all of the leaders of Israel. And that place was called Massah, our testing, and Merivah, our quarreling, because the children quarreling, and they tested Adonai by asking, is Adonai with us or not? And next what followed was Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Now Moshe told Joshua to choose men and to go out and fight against Amalek. Now he told him that tomorrow he would go stand on top of the hill with Yahweh's staff in hand with the ineffable name on it. So as we could say Yeshua because we know the story of the correlation between the two of them. He was a precursor of Yeshua, did as told and went to battle. Well, as Moshe raised his staff, Israel would prevail every time the staff was raised, but as he lowered it, they did not. But as his hands became heavy, well, they put a stone under him to sit it on. And Aaron and Hur held up his hands up until sunset. Thus, Joshua defeated Amalek. Adonai told Moshe, write about it in a book to be remembered and tell it to Joshua. Also that Amalek and any memory of him would be blotted out from under heaven. And Moshe built an altar and called it Adonai Nisi. Adonai is my banner and miracle. Now notice this, that right when the Israelites asked, is Adonai present among us or not? That is when the Amalek and his people attacked them. So we could say that right after they tested Yahweh, that's when the Amalekites attacked them. But as Moshe raised his rod, the Israelites prevailed. But as the rod was lowered, the enemy prevailed. So you see, Yahweh was showing us that when the Torah is read and picked up to read daily, you will have Yahweh's word to help you prevail against all things evil. But when you don't study and read your Torah, you will be overcome by the enemy because you don't have the tools or the body of armor or the armor of Yeshua, our Messiah, to put on and protect you. Now, for our Haftorah portion, this too, as with the rescuing from the hand of Pharaoh, as with the order that Moshe gave to Joshua to go battle against Amalek, so here is Adonai giving an order to the Israelites to go march to Mount Tabor and take 10,000 men, and that Yahweh would be with his people and will hand Sisera, the enemy, over to them, just as he did with Amalek. But it takes faith first and foremost. That is why they had to go into battle, but have Amunah to know that Yahweh would protect them and see them succeed. And just like with the rescuing of the children of Israel from Egypt and Pharaoh, and afterwards the singing of the song of Moshe, with this rescuing by Yahweh once again against Sisera, hereafter is another song sung by Deborah the prophet and Baruch the ben of Avinoam as an everlasting testament to Yahweh's miraculous deliverance of his people. Now Deborah gave them 40 years of shalom, peace with Yahweh, and the Israelites were in the wilderness for how long? Yes, 40 years, led by Moshe with Yahweh. Now, as we move forward into our gospel portion, our Messianic gospel portion, we must understand that just as it is good to give thanks to Adonai, that it is also great to stand strong for him and to show mercy to all that love us and likewise hate us. We should always return love for anger and place others before ourselves, just as Yeshua did, because we're no greater than the Master. Now, when people persecute you for worshiping Yahweh and Yeshua, you are not getting it done to you, but through you to Adonai, because the enemy does not love our Yahweh. Now, when you are in him, you are a light for the world, and others lights their lights off of your light. So keep shining your light for others to see it in the dark and to come and get light from you by seeing your positive ways and faith and actions and love in Yahweh. As you glorify Yikta Yahweh, magnify Yahweh. Now, Yeshua came to show us that all of the Torah could in fact be accomplished by man, and that he would show us how, and that not only would one yud not pass from the Torah, and that he did not come to do away with the Torah or law, such as many try to say that it was placed on the cross, because it is still valid, but we can repent of our old sins and not return to them, and to know that Yahweh's holy feast days are still valid today, as he gave us the law for and the rules in the mitzvahs in the Torah. And that also keeping his Shabbat, which is from Friday sundown until Saturday sundown, is still valid. And that we are to still observe his new moon days as well. And that we are to forgive all those who have hurt or wronged us, just as Yeshua and Yahweh had forgiven us. Now, as it says, if your right hand causes you to sin, gouge it out. As your right eye causes you to sin, or your right hand causes you to sin. Now, as it says, if your right hand causes you to sin, or your right eye, then gouge it out. Thus, if you are, for example, addicted to pornography, then throw out your porno collection and safeguard your internet or your phone or satellite or cable services to keep you away from these things. And love all of your enemies and pray for them. Be perfect just as Abba in Shamayim is perfect in all of his ways, and seek and place Yahweh first. And now we will have the Aaronic blessing. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Adonai lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. This has been a weekly Messianic Torah portion from Following Yeshua Ministries. For more information or for guidance, please visit www.followyeshuanow.com.